Yep. We are trying to film our Learn to Swim with Me series, episode 4, which is how to get a fresh breath. And the weather is not cooperating with us right now, but we're going to wait it out because this is a very important episode. Can't wait to see you guys at the finish line. In today's episode, you are going to learn how to get a fresh breath so that you're no longer limited on how far you can swim on a single breath. This is Learn to Swim with Me, episode number 4. I am Coach Jeff. Let's begin. Step 1 of learning how to get a fresh breath is actually starting out of the water so that we can get used to the movement before we have to do the movement in the water. So here's the step-by-step breakdown of what I'd like you to practice at home before you go to the pool. Step 1, I just want you to bend slightly at your waist. Step 2, bring both arms straight out in front of you. Step 3, we're going to turn our palms out. This is going to help prepare our arms for the movement of moving down to our side. But from there, as soon as the arms start to push to our side, we're going to lift our chin up, open our mouth, get a fresh breath of air, continue moving our arms down to our side, and then start to bring our head back down. All right, then we're gonna gently bring our arms back up to the top for a recovery and complete that process again. We're gonna bend at the waist, bring our arms forward, turn our palms out. As soon as the arms start to move to our side, we're gonna lift our head up, take a breath, head back down, keep our arms going, and then recover our arms back up to the top. I'd like for you to practice this a minimum of 10 times, but our students have found the most amount of success if they practice more like 30, 40, or 50 times, so they really get used to the movement before having to do it in the water. But now that you've done that, let's get in the water and let's start breaking it down step by step. Step 2 of learning how to get a fresh breath, or our first step actually in the water, is gonna happen here on the wall. And now is the first time in our entire progression that I am gonna tell you to blow bubbles. And this is really important because when we lift our head up, we only want one motion, and that's bringing air into our body. And so the time to start blowing bubbles is now when our face is in the water. There are 2 different ways that you can blow bubbles when your face is underwater to prepare for a fresh breath. Way number 1 is a continuous and slow exhaling underwater the entire time your face is in the water. That looks a little bit like this. Way number 2 is holding your breath up until the last moment and then giving yourself a little bit more of a forceful exhale right before you lift your head. And that looks a little bit more like this. And I would say about half our students do way number 1, half our students do way number 2. So I think it's important for you to try both of those ways at home to see which way you like best. Let me demonstrate both of those with my face actually in the water so that you can see how to begin practicing this at home. Here's way number 1, our continuous exhale the entire time my face is underwater. Notice how the bubbles were very gentle. And now notice the difference with way number 2, where we're holding our breath and then giving a more forceful exhale right before we're gonna lift our head. Here's way number 2. All right, step number 3 is the timing of our breath. And that happens when our arms on the second pull start to separate and come towards our side. All right, it's very important that we breathe every 2 pulls. And this is so that our body has a chance to rise back to the top or be more buoyant in the water between our breaths. If we're breathing on every single stroke, I think that's too frequent. And our students have found that if they hold their breath for 3 or 4 strokes, that as they start to go further distances, they run out of air and they fatigue quicker. And so we found that sweet spot is really breathing every second stroke. All right, so just to reiterate, when the arms start to pull and spread from, let me go again. So when our arms start to break from the front and our momentum is the greatest, that's when we're gonna lift our head up, get our breath. Remember, only inhaling at that point, and then our head goes right back down. All right, enough talking. Let's actually see it happen. First example of doing this is going to be with our continuous exhale the entire time. And this is way number 2, where we're holding our breath and exhaling more forcefully after our second pull, right before we're gonna lift our head up to get a breath. And that looks like this. My personal preference is way number 2, and I think way number 2 is going to be better for most students if you have a low body fat percentage or high muscle mass, because holding onto that air for a little bit longer I think is more beneficial for those students that have that body type. But with that being said, it is your personal preference, and I'd love to hear from you. Add a comment in the comment section below on which one of these 2 breathing strategies is the right one for you. Now, from here, I want to cover the 3 most common mistakes that new swimmers make when learning how to forward breathe with this movement. Far and away, the most common mistake that new swimmers make is lifting their head up way too high and keeping it up as their face is entering back into the water. It is really important that we only lift our head up as far as we need to in order to get our breath, which tends to be less than an inch above the surface of the water. Anything higher than that is going to make the rest of our body sink in the water, and anything lower than that, I think you're at risk of potentially getting water in your mouth, and that is just uncomfortable, and it's something that we want to avoid if we can. So let me show you in example number 1 what it looks like if you're lifting your head up too high. Then in example number 2, I won't lift it up high enough, and then I'll give you example number 3, which is the exact height I would like it to be for you. I think it was Einstein that said that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. And so if we're lifting our head up too high, what you're gonna find is the reaction, or the opposite effect, is that our body goes very deep in the water after that. And that can be uncomfortable for a lot of new swimmers. So I'd like for you to avoid that. And here now is example number 2, where we're lifting it just a little bit too low. Check it out. Wait, I still have my goggles on. That's okay. This now is way number 3, which is the perfect height to lift your chin up when getting your fresh breath. Check it out. Common mistake number 2 is having too much force in our movement and not relaxing enough through the movement. Generally, If you're forcing your movement too much, that means that we're not relaxed enough in the water and that we need to take a step back in the curriculum. We're not quite ready for this step yet. So what I'd urge you to do, if that sounds like you, is go back, start at the beginning. I'm going to link episode number 1, episode number 2, and episode number 3 here so that you can go back and spend more time relaxing and acclimating to the prior steps. Because remember, this is effortless swimming. So we do not want to have forced movements. When we force our movements, what tends to happen is our muscles ball up or consolidate. When that happens, we're more dense in the water. So everything becomes more tiring, harder to do, and we just fatigue quicker. But let me show you an example of what it looks like to have too forceful of movements. And then again, I'll demonstrate in example number 2 what relaxed movement looks like. So here's example number 1 where we're forcing those movements too much. Notice how when I am forceful with my movements, I'm still able to swim from point A to point B. But I urge you to reconsider the point of why we're in the water and why we're swimming. Remember, this is peaceful swimming. Our goal is not to fatigue ourselves instantly, but to be able to sustain swimming as long as we choose. The only way to do that is learn how to relax into the movement. All right, so here's example number 2 where we're again just peacefully moving our arms through the water. Now notice, if you are completely at peace with this movement, we have a delay at our side for 2 to 5 seconds. We covered that in the prior video, but I'll cover it again here because it's really important. One of the main indicators of not being relaxed enough in our movement is having anxiety when our arms are at our side, thinking that the water's not going to hold us up and we're going to sink, all right? But watch what it looks like when we do have but notice what it looks like when we are able to have the peace and presence of mind to delay our arms at the side. Watch our beautiful glide over the top of the water. Mistake number 3 is a really tricky one because all of my students have an urge to want to make this mistake, and that's lifting our head up and keeping it up for too long. And it's pretty natural to want to do this. When we lift our head up and keep it up, it makes us feel a little bit safer, more aware of our surroundings because we get to see where we're going. The problem with that is when we lift our head up, especially when it comes and we're lifting at the torso and arching our back, when that movement happens, the rest of our body, if this is my head and this is my legs, when our head goes up, our legs have to go down. And as I mentioned in a prior episode, that means we're swimming uphill, or our body is pushing a lot of water. There's a lot of resistance in front of us, which slows us down and it makes us sink because our head weighs a lot and that weight gets distributed to the rest of our body, which makes us sink, as I just mentioned. Nonetheless, let me show you in example 1 what it looks like to keep our head up for too long and the impact that that has on our body position. And then I'll show you the proper way again in example number 2. So here's number 1 where we're lifting our head up and keeping it up for too long. Did you notice how bouncy I was in the water? I was like a basketball being dribbled, all right? So if you notice yourself bouncing in the water, meaning going up and down, and not smooth staying on top of the surface, that might mean that you're keeping your head up for a little bit too long. Now, let's look at what it should look like after we lift our head up and get our breath. We want to immediately put our head back down, looking straight down at the bottom of the pool, having our spine in alignment. When we do that, it looks like this. All right, you guys, that is it. That is how you lift your head forward to get a fresh breath. And now you are no longer limited by a single breath hold on how far you can peacefully swim. Congratulations. This is a monumental step in your learn to swim progression. And I want to urge you, if you're having any difficulty at all and you want more access to me and Coach Meredith to help resolve any of those issues at any point up to here in your swimming progression, please consider joining our free adult learn to swim community. More information on that can be found in the link in the description below. I am so excited to show you what you have to look forward to in our next episode, which is episode number 5 in the Learn to Swim with Me series, where we'll begin learning how to float on our back and create movement on our back. Here is what you have to look forward to. Guys, thank you so much for joining me. If you haven't already, like the video, subscribe to our channel, and if you know anyone that could utilize these videos to help them learn to swim, make sure to share it with them as well. Thank you so much. I can't wait to see you in the next video.